So, this is the part where we get to hand Jackson a microphone.
I was just thinking I was going to go sit down.
Yeah. Spiritual exercise sometimes is a physical thing, too. So, if we're going to spend the next 15 years in this particular philosophy, or if you've already spent 15 years, part of our practice is to be open to questioning. To be in the mystery requires us to be willing to stay in the question. And that requires that we have a space where questions can be asked. So think back in time, if you were raised in a Christian tradition and went to Sunday school, what was the question that got you thrown out? Because I know my people. Many of you were probably looked at least a little bit sideways. If I have said anything since the last time we did this that didn't make sense to you, if a question is coming up in your life, especially if the question is coming up in your life, I promise you it's coming up in other people's lives. So please be the one who asks it. And with that, all we ask is that you speak into the microphone so that as this is recorded, we can hear the questions as well as the answers. Otherwise, I have to repeat the question, and that takes up twice the time, and yada, yada, yada. Anyone? Anyone? Do we have only enlightened beings in the room? In which case, I'll sit down and you answer the questions. Miss Butterfield and then Tess. Miss Butterfield first. Excuse me, Dr. Butterfield.
Yes.
I just got stink eye.
The question I was asked that was most difficult for me as a child was, and this was asked in church and at home, are you telling the truth?
Me personally or you personally?
Was I personally telling the truth? The hardest question. And as a child, how do you know truth from false? And once you learn it, how do you avoid using lack of truth as an escape? It just doesn't work.
Okay. So how do I know that I'm telling the truth? How does anyone else know that I'm telling the truth? Just so happens I'm listening to Malcolm Gladwell's book, Talking to Strangers. Has anyone else read that yet? It's a challenging book for me because basically what he says is we think we can read people really well and know when they're lying. And people in the CIA and the FBI and cops and judges and everybody else think that we can tell when people are lying, and studies show that we absolutely cannot. So often when we're talking little t truth, the facts, are we getting the facts right? Often we're wrong. If we're trying to guess if somebody else is telling the truth, for the most part, we default to honesty, which is a wonderful thing. But every so often, it kind of bites us in certain tender areas. Capital T truth is even harder to talk about. As the Taoists would say, the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. There is something about absolute, pure, and perfect truth that does not lend itself to being spoken in any human language that I'm aware of. So how do we know when we're in alignment with truth? It's really close to the question of how will I know right from wrong? How will I know what's right to do? And Ernest Holmes, who is the founder of this philosophy, said that you won't know. You already do know. There is something within you that knows when you are speaking truth. There is something in you that knows what is right from what is wrong. It's just inherent. And a big part of that whole question is, can I trust the God in me? And so as it's written in our textbook, when we learn to trust the universe, including the universe inside of us, I would add, when we learn to trust the universe, we shall be happy, prosperous, and well. When we learn that we can default and that we do naturally default to capital T truth, our lives get better. And that's, I know I am telling truth to the best of my ability, because it would be silly for me to tell anything else. If I want the highest and best life for myself in all areas, I must speak truth. Otherwise, I basically speak illness or poverty into my own life. Is that good an answer for you? Good or otherwise? Okay. Tess had her hand up next.
Okay, so part of that was already just answered by what you just said. So, but it has to do with climate strike and our kids that are raising the elevation awareness of that they don't want to live in a future that is not going to be there for them. But to me, when I and I understand what the kids are, where the kids are coming from, but it seems very fear-based. And how do we help lead our kids in that way without going to that place of fear? Because I believe in my full heart that our planet can heal.
Absolutely.
And I like your message of being for something against nothing. And I believe that we should be for being good stewards of this earth. So how do we, I mean, I think it's great all these kids are out there climate striking, but again, it's fear-based.
Okay, and thank you, that's a great question. And I'm beginning to believe that little f fear, as opposed to it has taken on a pattern in your life, little f fear is kind of like little a anger. We demonize it because we're not comfortable with it. We make it wrong to be in fear. And if you have evidence in front of you that the people in charge of your life and your well-being are not doing the right things for you, are not acting in your best interest, and in fact, they are harming you, fear and anger are actually a very healthy response. I've worked with a lot of kids who were abused and who were not allowed to get angry, were not allowed to express their fear when their parents were doing things that were felonies. In that case, for them to get downright ticked was the best and healthiest thing they could do. Now, when it comes to creating a world policy that we live with, it's better, in my opinion, this is the highest capital T truth I know. Wow, I just realized I'm being a capitalist today. The highest truth I know is that living in a place of love and growth as opposed to fear is a much better long-term plan. And those who are downright ticked about what we are not doing about the climate crisis, it's kind of like we're in a burning building and some people prefer to continue playing poker rather than leave. Or, they won't let us call the fire department. They've already called the fire department and said, don't worry about it. It's okay. We're just going to keep, the stove turned all the way up. And so as these kids ride that wave of energy, I trust that as they take on positions of power within the social structure as opposed to against the social structure, they will move on into a sense of growth and a sense of love and a sense of proactivity that comes from valuing people and this planet, as opposed to having to be against those who have calcified into their power and are no longer seeing things clearly. And I think it would be best for everyone if we could see things clearly, if we could tell the truth. So I think they're in the beginning stages that are very necessary and crazy uncomfortable. Anybody else notice that? All right. Who else? In the back.
On a lighter note,
Oh, thank you.
I remember this last time you were sharing that Sibley Hall came from a name other than yourself, and I was trying to figure out where that came from.
Bob Sibley was one of the people who helped get this building built. He's also known throughout the movement as one of the people who took on the job of writing bylaws for the entire movement. You know, that kind of work, it tends to be pretty thankless. Who here wants to write policies and procedures? Yeah, Kira. And I am blessed to have a board member who is so skilled in making sure that our infrastructure exists. We are blessed with people who will do that kind of work. Wilfred, who is on the board, does a ton of research and manages to catch little things that would have been really, really bad had we not been aware of them. So we have a wonderful board that is in the tradition of Bob Sibley. Now, his wife was Reverend Beverly Sibley, who was an assistant minister here and kind of ended up being the inadvertent interim a couple times. She was also really powerful in this place, but it's Dr. Bob Sibley that room is named for. And yes, we have spent some time convincing the rest of the movement that I am not their daughter. It sounds like it would have been fun, you know? Wouldn't that be cool? And that's where it comes from. Although when I first I'm pretty sure that's also what got me the interview in terms of getting this job. And so I have great gratitude for him.
Thank you, Reverend.
Isn't it amazing how many people we don't know that have helped us get where we are? How many people, we might recognize their names like Sibley, because I happen to identify with it, but there are so many people that have helped us get where we are in the best possible way. And being grateful for that is most salutary.
Ernest Holmes brings up Jesus in many of his books.
Mm-hmm.
Center for Spiritual Living, I have noted in other churches as well. Jesus isn't mentioned too often, and yet I hear God's spark in me all the time. I believe I'm an example of Jesus, and I believe I have a Jesus spark in me as well. And I'm just kind of curious to know, is there a position that Center for Spiritual Living takes in regards to not including Jesus in talks and etc.?
We don't have a position in terms of, no, we can't talk about my boy Jesus. We do have a position that says each and every center is self-defined. The people within it get to define the flavor of the center, as it were. We were taught in ministerial school that the minister and the music really do kind of determine who will be brought in here, who will be attracted to this. So we're doing pretty well with Jackson, I must say. It's another person who I have great gratitude because he has been instrumental in creating this space. Ernest Holmes was actually asked, are we a Christian denomination? And this was kind of an ongoing debate because we have no problem with Buddha. We like Krishna. We'll invite them over for dinner any day. And I promise Buddha I'll make it vegetarian. However, in the eyes of many mainstream Christians, because we don't focus on Jesus as the one and only Son of God, we are not considered Christian by them. But then again, I'm not considered in shape by some people. And I would argue that I have a shape. I have the body of a goddess. It just happens to be the Earth Mother. And so loving myself in that way and redefining things for myself, including my relationship with Jesus, or Krishna or Buddha or Muhammad or any of them. That is my responsibility, and it is my prerogative. Many people who have come into this center and into our centers in general have told me that they would not have shown up if we called it a church, because that is not welcoming to Buddhists who don't do church. It's not welcoming to the Jewish tradition who don't do a church. It's a very Christian word. And so in order to bring in all of the family, to bring in all of our brothers and sisters in the Christ consciousness, which is Krishna consciousness, which is Buddha nature, which is all of that, we don't focus as much on Jesus. Now, Ernest Holmes did, because that's the tradition he was raised in. Those were the words he understood. And he had conversations with people like Einstein. He had letter writing with Bob W., Bill W., and it was Dr. Bob, wasn't it? Okay, Dr. Bob and Bill W. He had conversation with them. He had written conversation with Carl Jung. So he would pull in the finest minds that were available to him, including the work of Emerson and the work of the Greek philosophers and the work of Jesus. And what he said was, we do not deny the divinity of Jesus, nor do we deny the divinity of every other person. We celebrate it all. And so, yes, I can see where it sounds like we don't talk about Jesus much. In some centers, it's every other word. In some centers, they won't say the word God, because they have made a decision that that's not where they're at. Here, I use Bible stories every so often. I try and make sure that I'm giving us a balanced look at the different resources available to us. And then I tell a silly joke. Ba-dum-bum. Who else? We still have some time. Right down here. CJ.
I like the sermon that you gave. Yes? Is it on? No?
Yeah, it's on because I can tell.
Okay.
You just have to kind of eat it like it's an ice cream cone. There you go.
I really enjoyed the sermon that you gave one time because there is so much male reference to God or entities or anything. But you gave a really great explanation about the power being on a continuum, the male on one side and the female on another, both of them being necessary. Could you talk about that some more?
Sure. So what I think you're referring to is talking about the masculine and the feminine being on a continuum. And we're learning today that in our physical bodies, male and female is also a continuum. You know, I had the experience this Friday night of listening to someone who had moved to Thailand. And apparently they don't have homosexism, or homophobia as we call it, in Thailand, because for them it's been really normal to have gay people around all the time, and people who were genderqueer and non-binary and all those words we're now making up. They're like, yeah, and did you not know about that? How did you not know about that? In order to, what we do with our spiritual life is recognize that we need the passive and the active. We need the divine feminine and the divine masculine. We need new and we need old. We need all of it. Wholeness is what we talk about when we talk about God. It is the whole. It is the oneness in which nothing is excluded. And so while mainstream religion on this planet, or at least Western religion on this planet at this moment, is more masculine-centered, if we don't have a balance, we can't kick out all the guys. I know that there are some groups where it feels like guys are unwelcome. And, you know, Okay. There are times when women want to get together. There are times when guys just want to get together. And that's cool. And we need all of it. I need the quiet prayer that is my divine feminine, and I need to get up and go do something with the answers I get, which is the divine masculine. If you don't do both, you end up nasal gazing. Nasal? That's a little bit more difficult than navel gazing. We have different spiritual practices here, ladies and gentlemen, and some of them are right on the nose. Pointed, as the case may be. Yeah, did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Next. Anyone? Okay, Joy, in the back. I think this is going to need to be our last question, just because linear time happens at this level.
Okay, so in Science of Mind, we create our own reality by affirmative prayer, spiritual mind treatment, and focusing on what it is that we want. And I'm experiencing something I don't want.
Cool.
And I can't. Super cool. And so I'm trying to find a way that, do I need to release? Obviously, I need to release something. That's always a good idea. But, I have a situation where I want a certain thing. It's not going to be that way. And I keep sort of focusing on what I don't want. And I also feel like I asked this question probably like 2 years ago. I'm like, oh, so this is like my thing.
So you're moving deeper into the spiral on that question. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yes, and I'd like to spiral up and out of this type of thinking, and let this person have their thing, and then I have my thing, but that I can find a way to feel good.
Okay. So if I'm understanding your question correctly, it's the same thing that I got called on by our community spiritual leader recently. I was sitting there, I was talking to them and essentially using them as a confessional because, hey, Catholicism ain't dead in me. I like it. There's candles that are lit, and that's good. And like you, I had created something that I found very disturbing. And it wasn't what I had meant to create. And actually, it wasn't the community spiritual leader. It was it was Sharon Hudson, who serves a different role that used to be called president. It's the field leader. And she said, I'm just going to stop you right there, because what I'm hearing is the blame game. I'm hearing you beating yourself up and misusing this philosophy by going in and trying to find what I did to create this and what's wrong with me. Apparently, we're not supposed to do that according to Reverend Dr. Sharon Hudson. Did you know that beating ourselves up is not part of our philosophy? That what we do is say, okay, so that is not my highest and best for whatever reason, but what I was looking for in that situation was, I'm going to just pretend that it's a romantic thing because that's an easy one, or a business thing. What it is I want is not showing up in the wrapping I thought it would be in. But what I want is still the same thing. I just need to let go of that particular form. What if the people who, like Steve Jobs, what if he was really focused on getting a great job with IBM? And he spent so much time trying to earn that job and focusing on that job rather than creating the chance to work with computers and the chance to revolutionize the computing industry. Instead of working with IBM, he's supposed to obviously go do Apple stuff. Well, we know that now. At the time, he probably didn't. I don't know that he ever tried to get a job at IBM. I'm making this one up. I am not telling the truth. I am using a story to exemplify truth. It's possible that there are better versions of things that are awaiting us. And so as we do our work, as we continue to do the affirmation and refining our understanding of what it is we do want, as we walk through that process, that puts even more power behind creating the good. So long as we're still focused on what we don't want or the way it's not working, we're just going to keep creating more of that, and our energy is not going to what we do want. And I know it gets frustrating. Girl, I know. Has anyone else never ever not manifested something instantly? Like, poof, there it was. We live in a physical world, and that includes linear time, which we are kind of out of for this part. And so I'm going to take this into prayer and focus again on what we want, which is the world that works for everyone. And so join me now in our form of prayer. This is a spiritual mind treatment that I do from here because I know that I am one with every face of God, every Buddha, every Christ that is in this room right now. Every godling and every goddessling. And I give thanks for this presence. I give thanks for this one thing that we call life, the single power and presence that defines and is the essence of this life experience here on what we call planet Earth. And in this moment, as I focus on that sense of life that is within me and within everybody I meet, I enter into a sense of oneness and speak for everyone here. I speak for all life on the planet, knowing that we are one, that what harms my brother or sister in Christ harms me, and so I lift up all of us and let go of the old ideas about blame and shame and what's wrong with me, and move back into the capital T truth, which says, what's right with me, and then spends the rest of the millennia listing it. I celebrate the good that we are and the good that we are revealing at the physical level. I celebrate the healing of the earth through the power of these kids that are so filled with life. I celebrate the ways in which this new understanding of oneness is moving into our physical world right now and creating a whole paradigm shift. Creating a paradigm shift where we are not judged by the color of our skin, but by the content of our character. That character being the inner Christ. I celebrate and give thanks for Spirit doing all the work, simply moving through us as we create clear channels within ourselves, as we create clear ideas of what it is we would like to see happen on this planet and in our personal lives. And I accept that good above and beyond and through all people. And also at a level higher than we could possibly dream of from here. As we spiral up the great spiral, learning and knowing and being more and more the thing itself. I bless it all, I call it good, and I release it to the power of the law, and so it is.